Almost 40% of all cyber attacks on small firms start with a single employee clicking a link they thought was a routine document request. It usually happens in the middle of tax season when everyone is moving fast and the pressure to respond to clients is at an all-time high. Someone on the team sees what looks like a shared folder from a long-term client needing an urgent return review. They click the link and a login page pops up that looks exactly like Microsoft 365. They enter their credentials and nothing happens, so they assume it was just a glitch and get right back to work. But in that moment, an attacker clones the active browser session and walks right past the multi-factor authentication without a single alert ever going off. Now, the firm is looking at $50,000 in cleanup costs and regulatory fines while every client file is in the hands of a stranger. The mistake is thinking your multi-factor authentication is a wall that stops everything. The real priority is recognizing when a login request is just a setup for a session hijack. I will show you how to spot this early so you can keep control of your accounts. Stick around, because at the end of this video, I will map out the exact plan to lock down your office the second you realize a link has been clicked. You've probably realized that relying on your staff's split-second judgment is a massive liability when you're responsible for sensitive client files. That annual training video clearly didn't stop this click, and now you're wondering if your current IT is even watching for these gaps. You need a clear path to stop the damage immediately so you can protect your reputation and keep the office running. I'm Kevin, founder of Sentry Systems, and since 1999, I've helped firms stop silent email breaches before they wreak havoc. Running a CPA firm means your front door is effectively always open for client documents. When your team is processing hundreds of files a week just to stay on top of the queue, clicking a shared link to download a tax form feels as normal as turning a deadbolt. You are so focused on keeping the business moving that it is easy to ignore a small gap in the window frame. The real risk here is not just an intruder trying to kick in the front door with a stolen password. It is about someone sneaking in through a back door by stealing the digital key already sitting in your lock. I am talking about the digital session token that keeps you logged into your software, so you do not have to keep typing your credentials. If a thief grabs that, they can walk right past your alarms without triggering a single alert. Because these requests look like a standard part of your process, I use the source verification filter. This is a simple rule where we never click a login link inside an unexpected email, even if the sender looks like a familiar face standing on the porch. Let's look at Nancy, who runs a boutique CPA firm with 6 employees. It is April, and the office is a blur of 14-hour days. A tax preparer gets an email to verify a 1099 form. He sees a standard Microsoft login screen and chooses speed over verification. He types in his code and the screen refreshes. By morning, Nancy's email is flooded with unauthorized bank changes. A hacker used a stolen session to download 3 years of tax returns. Nancy spent Saturday calling 50 clients about compromised Social Security numbers. The betrayal on her oldest client's face felt worse than the $50,000 cleanup bill. Most owners think MFA is a finish line, but for a session hijacker, it is just a hurdle they have already cleared. Once they have the session, they can walk past logins without ever being stopped. This is where instincts get people in trouble when relying on tools alone. I see that exact failure play out every time a firm calls me for help. I remember getting a call on a Tuesday morning from an owner who was staring at a login screen he could not bypass. It kept showing a logout message no matter what he did, and I knew immediately things were headed in a bad direction. He sounded like he'd been up since 3 in the morning fighting with his computer. He'd already tried changing his password 3 times, thinking it was a simple lockout, and you could hear the exhaustion in his voice as he realized he was out of options. I logged in remotely and saw a ghost in the machine. There was an active browser session originating from a state halfway across the country, and the attacker was clicking through internal dashboards while we both watched. The owner was sitting at his desk with his head in his hands. He kept saying he couldn't tell the partners yet because he didn't even know how to explain that he had lost control of his own workstation. We started looking at the file logs, and the damage was clear. Every client folder touched in the last 6 hours was already synced to an external cloud drive we didn't recognize. The timeline was the worst part of the discovery. That stolen session had been active for nearly 12 hours before the first security notification ever hit his phone. I had to look him in the eye and tell him the password changes failed because the hackers didn't need a password. They already had his digital keys, and because he didn't use the source verification filter, he had handed those keys over without realizing it. He went completely silent when he realized the hacker was virtually sitting in his chair. That realization that someone else has been in your space is a heavy truth for any owner to process. We forced a global logout and killed every active session to stop the data from leaving the building. It was a brutal process to stabilize the environment and reset the access, but we contained the breach. But the trust was gone. 2 of his major corporate clients pulled their accounts by the end of the month because the reputation damage was permanent. Small firms fall for this because they trust the login screen more than they trust the source. They assume a pop-up or a login box is legitimate just because it looks the way it is supposed to look. You avoid this by adopting the source verification filter. If someone clicks that link, you have to move faster than the attacker to contain the damage. First, force a global sign-out for that user across all email accounts to kill any stolen session tokens immediately. Second, change the account password and revoke all active app passwords to keep the hijacker from locking back in. Third, check the email forwarding rules and sent items to see if the attacker is already using the account to trick your clients. If you could rethink one thing today, remember that this isn't just an IT issue. It's about your business's survival. And one careless click can bring it all crashing down. Neglecting to act swiftly after an employee clicks a phishing email can jeopardize your entire business, exposing sensitive client data and tarnishing your hard-earned reputation. If you want to run a baseline security assessment on your own business to see where your defenses are vulnerable, click the link in the description below to execute our 10-minute cyber health audit. Let's protect your client files and your reputation before tomorrow morning.